Hello Cancer, and welcome to your in-depth monthly forecast for October for the Sun or the Ascendant. I'm going to give you some key strands to look out for, but please stay with me. I will then dive deep to give you in forensic detail each of the key strands and influences particularly relevant to your sign, which of course is governed by the moon. So the moon phases are particularly impactful on you, and there's an extraordinarily important solar eclipse which I need to tell you about, which brings so much promise to you for the next 6 months. It really could be quite life-changing. And if you followed my channel for some time, you'll know that I'm someone who's not inclined to exaggerate things or over-promise. I like to keep it real, but really exciting. Also, Venus, the planet of charm in its rulership of Libra, of relating, of that sign, but also of sensuality and an appreciation of the good things in life and money for its rulership of Taurus. Well, that's forging a very important connection to the Sun right through the spine of this month. And why that's particularly relevant is that if you have been wanting to create the home environment or the family environment or the emotional inner environment that is so important to all of us, this month gives you a really fabulous opportunity to work towards that, particularly the first 3 weeks. I think the last 10 days is much more about having fun and enjoying a livelier and more socially interactive time. Now, of course, Pluto and Saturn have both been retrograde for some while. They both go direct this month. Mars slams on the brakes, so I need to tell you about that. Mercury comes out of a retrograde, but is moving through 3 zodiac signs, and the last one particularly important for you. So much to share with you. But if you would like to ascend above this zodiac broadcast and understand what serious astrology can do for you, please give me 3 pieces of personal birth data of time, date and place of birth. I can provide you a roadmap that can guide you for the rest of your life, plus your year 23 forecast with the rest of 22 free and 30% off with my special package. Please see the link below. No 2 charts are the same, totally based on your birth data, and can give you searing insights how to make your moves forwards or when not to make moves. Now, if you've yet to subscribe to my channel, I'd be honoured if you did so now. Please click or tap on the bell notification symbol. If you've already done so, thank you so much for your continued support. It means a lot. So Cancer, as we come into October, the Sun and Venus are in house 4, very much to do with our environment. Now, if you're very happy where you're living, I think the combination of these two right through to the 23rd of this month could see you wanting to go to places that are very pleasing to the senses. Now, if it's the seaside, or it doesn't matter if it's near a home or further afield, or it's a river or a lake, a more countryside situation, or you do want to get the colour booklets out and make some cosmetic changes with your decoration or add some new features in terms of furnishings, this would be a brilliant time to embrace all that potential. But of course, Mercury has been in a retrograde, and on the 2nd it moves forwards in your sector of everyday communication. If there has been some snags, or you found that perhaps interaction with a sibling or a neighbour have been a bit frayed or distorted or disrupted over the last weeks, I think things can start to clarify for you as this month moves forwards. Now, the 8th sees Pluto end a retrograde in your sector of relating. But Pluto has been such a powerful impact on your situation since 2008. The fact it just comes to the end of the retrograde is not necessarily going to be a panacea for all relationship issues. It's very potent because Pluto's about power, but it's also about where power is not always used appropriately. That can be towards us or from us. And also, Pluto can help us to understand at a much deeper level the psychological dimension, and it's about change. And this month it is clashing with that Sun-Venus combination, which goes on through to the 23rd, on the 19th in an exact way. So there still could be some push or pull around where to live, who with, or around a family situation. Maybe there is someone in your group, whether it is your extended family or your blood relatives, where you feel that you need to set your boundary a little bit stronger. But with Venus in the mix, diplomacy is something that you can use or deploy as an asset in order to deal with any tricky situations. But when Pluto is in the mix, leverage is often sometimes a mendacious influence just hidden out of sight. So beneath the charm can often be the desire for someone to get their own way. Now, it is said that Cancerian people do like to be fairly controlling, particularly around the family unit. Now, whether that's true of you or not, it depends, because you may have worked very, very hard to tap into a deeper part of your nature and to evolve. We all need a degree of control over our environment for sure, but if there are any politics that could still come to the fore, I think trying to understand what you gain and what you have, the riches that are already there. And it's not always about necessarily just reacting to situations, because the sign of Cancer is protective, it is nurturing, incredibly kind, very, very supportive, but it can also be a bit prickly and also see withdrawal when there's challenges. And that, in a way, could be seen as being controlling, even if the intent is not to control anyone else, just to control your space that you're living in a way which makes you feel secure. So I think what Pluto's saying to you, once it comes out of the retrograde particularly, and in its link to the Sun and Venus, is try to engage more. Even if it's sometimes tender, it hurts a bit to share how we might all see things in a different way. Ultimately, there's so much more to be gained. And Pluto can be about truth and revelation. So, see it as a very constructive possibility for you. Now, on the 9th, there is a full moon. And this is a full moon which is going to make it, even for you, who could be pretty private about your feelings, it's going to make it more difficult to disguise how you're feeling about things. But it's a full moon which is reflecting back to that combination of the Sun and Venus. So if there is something that needs to be discussed of a personal nature to do with your work or your career or your goals, this is actually a really good time to do it. Mars in your 12th house is forging a rather awkward right angle with Neptune all through this month. And that's going to peak on the 12th. But it's also going to be repeated next month and in March. What does it mean? Well, feeding into this full moon, Mars is actually forging a brilliant link to the Sun and Venus, and in turn into Saturn. So we have a grand air trine between these three positions. But for you, they occur Mars 12, Sun, Venus 4, Saturn 8, all very psychological. But Mars, of course, can be about thrust. But what Neptune can do is amplify any sensitivities, because Mars in the 12th house, right through to the end of March pretty well next year, is going to push you to confront some painful issues from your past. But I think this link between Mars, the Sun, Venus and Saturn suggests that you can do this in a way that can be very beneficial to you if you just take the risk to do so. So that can be very, very positive. So if something does come into the open, there is something that you reveal or see it even as a confession, then I think actually it can be hugely liberating for someone like you who can be extraordinarily private. And as I say, control your space by withdrawal, but that to other people can be very, very painful and excluding. So there's an opportunity here to share things, even old grievances, clear the air. And the air positions of those planets, even though they're pushing you to engage at a more emotional level in house 12, 4 and 8, but the air ventilate the emotion, and that's the opportunity of this month. Now on the 10th, Mercury goes back into the sign of Libra, where it was from August 26th to September the 23rd. But just before that, the Sun continues its very positive and constructive angle to Saturn. And what I would say is, if there's anything you're wanting to change physically about where you live, and it goes beyond just the decorative domain, the Saturnian influence could see you get the thrust to make those changes, get in some contractors, maybe adding a new kitchen or a bathroom, or perhaps it's to do with changing where you live altogether. So moving into a new flat, a new property, renting one, all these kind of things can be very much to the fore in a constructive way during this time. And I think Mercury moving back into your 4th house could see some of the ideas that you've had hot, cold, off, on over some weeks, because it has gone into Libra and then back into the sign of Virgo. Lots of talking, lots of thinking. Now action can take place, communication can see some alterations. Also, for some Cancer people, you may start to think that working from home, Mercury in the 4th, could be a viable option for you in the longer term. But on the 12th, that square between Mars and Neptune becomes exact. If some things do come into the open that are painful, are historical, are things that you wouldn't necessarily want to shout from the rooftops, not because of any other reason than you are deeply a private person, just be conscious that Neptune in the 9th house is very amplifying, and therefore even if something to you is very, very painful, just be conscious that other people may see it slightly different, and Neptune can distort the reality somewhat. So anger, Mars, 12th house, old anger, 12th house, hidden enemies, Mars, 12th house, needs to compete with the unreality that Neptune can create in the 9th house. So just be conscious of that. But the 23rd does see Saturn come to the end of its retrograde, which began on June the 4th. And this is brilliant if you are wanting to make some structural changes to your mortgage, or you're wanting to in some way squeeze more economies out of your budget, or you're thinking perhaps about going into business but you need to raise some finance. Saturn going forwards in that 8th house area could be very positive. Saturn has a reputation of being very limiting, but remember, it always rewards hard work, perspiration and application added to the inspiration. The 23rd, however, is really magical for your sign in particular, because Venus and the Sun make their way together into the sign of Scorpio, which of course shares your sister water triplicity. So this is where you can be very bubbly, playful, sociable, and perhaps if you made some physical changes with your home, you're going to want to invite people around to share the new creative way that you've set up your home. On the other hand, it may be a time when you want to step out and be much more sociable outside your home. Now the 25th does see that solar eclipse that I promised you was the highlight of this month. And it's because it's in Scorpio, which is good for you, but it's conjunct Venus. So the next 6 months is really saying to you that if you want to bring extra joys into your world, you have a magnificent opportunity. I would speculate that this month is one of the most transformational months you've ever experienced. It could see you really come into terms with a lot of issues to do with your emotional identity, or about where you live, or family matters, or past historical hurts and upsets. But once you reach that solar eclipse, there's an opportunity to really start to live in the moment, demonstrate to people how much fun you can be, how creative, clever and arty you can be. Really can be very positive from that point. Now, from the 25th through to the 29th, Mercury does go into a bit of a bruising encounter with Pluto. Maybe there's going to be one more conversation at that time where there can be shared memories, and as the Queen said, recollections may vary, but this could be a critical point to have an exchange. But then on the 28th, Jupiter, the planet of hope, expansion, optimism, obviously of luck through its rulership of Sagittarius, but through its rulership of Pisces, which is very relevant to you. And remember, Jupiter is exalted in your sign, so it loves the sign of Cancer. I think that Jupiter's retrograde back into the sign of Pisces actually can see you thinking less about career, ambition and goals, and much more about the philosophies that guide you in your life. But if you are someone who loves to travel, it can be a wonderful time to think about that, particularly when on the 29th Mercury moves into your sister water sign of Scorpio. Here Mercury dives deep, it investigates, it gets and probes right beneath the surface. So that's interesting. Also, Jupiter, I should say, does go direct on November the 23rd, and December the 20th, it's going to go back into your sector of ambition. So if there is something you want to rethink, or perhaps you want to have some time out, just to have some space and independence from extra demands, the opportunity to punch through for those big goals and hopes is going to present itself again before the end of the year. But on the 30th, the curtain comes down on this month with Mars going into a retrograde. So this real cleansing that I think is going to go on partially this month, and can see a transition between some past issues and some more positive ones in the here and now. I still think at some kind of deeper level, this rinsing out and review will go on right through till March next year. But at the end of that journey, you really will, more than at any time in your life, be able to live in the present.